From their unyielding thirst for gold to their destruction of the Aztecs and Incas, stay tuned to number 1 to find out 10 crazy facts about the Spanish Conquistadors. Number 10. Who made up the group? The Conquistadors are one of the most famous and infamous groups in the history of the world because of their exploits. And their leader, Cortes, is etched into history as well. But there is one stigma, or stereotype, that is often associated with the group, mainly that they were all Spanish. Cortes was Spanish, and much of the group was Spanish in birth. However, the whole group itself wasn't. After all, the conquistadors traveled quite a bit, and this allowed them to go to many new countries, and in those countries were people who were willing to become part of their crusade. To that end, two of the most famous conquistadors, not named Cortes, were Greek and German. They were very happy to torture, maim, and kill in the name of the crusade. Not surprisingly, not only were their demises pretty bad themselves, one of them wasn't even brought back to his own country for burial. He was left to rot in an unmarked grave. Not the heroic end they were probably looking for. Number 9. The quest for gold. All crusades need purpose, and the conquistadors were no different. They were actually motivated by Christopher Columbus, whose adventures in the New World proved that there were things in these undiscovered lands that were ripe for the taking, if they were willing to brave the dangers. Cortes most certainly was, and so he went and gathered up an army and sailed to South America. Their biggest motivation was gold, which would be a motivating factor for many explorers to come, and they made their way for South America where they knew the gold would be. This started a long and bloody crusade, one that ended two different empires via the Aztec and Incan cultures. But to be clear, the conquistadors didn't just take the gold, they were also rather clever sometimes. They could tell that the native people weren't fully knowledgeable about who they were, and by that token could be tricked. So sometimes they went to the people and said that they had a disease of heart. And how do you cure such a disease? Why, with gold, of course. Not everyone fell for this, obviously, so they did the more basic measures then. But some did fall for their different ploys, making their conquests even greater. Number 8. Technology versus numbers. Before we talk about the modern technologies of the Spanish, take a moment to like this video and join the Zero to Hero community by subscribing below. Don't forget to click that little notification bell too, that will make sure you're always notified of our newest videos. As noted, the conquistadors made their names by dominating not one, but two ancient cultures, and they did it with brutal efficiency. But that begs the question, why were they that efficient? What was it about the conquistadors that made them so devastating a fighting force? Well, the answer is not their numbers. In fact, Cortes had a smaller army in both of his campaigns against the Aztecs and the Incans. But what he lacked in numbers, he made up for with armor and weapons. The advancements of the Spanish people were much greater than that of the Aztecs or Incans. The Spanish had not only developed cannons, but still armor and crossbows that could far outpace the basic bow and arrows that the native people had. Plus, because of the armor, which covered their bodies and head, they could take greater beatings and keep going, whereas a single bolt from a crossbow could easily take out any of the native people. Plus, while primitive, they did have muskets, and they used them to strike fear into the natives, causing them to panic and flee. Number 7. How did they get so ruthless? The main motivation for going to the New World was to find treasure, but as many in the modern era will note, wanting to find more treasure and having the stomach to continue finding treasure when things turn sour are two totally different things. The conquistadors are revered for their strength, determination, and ability to push through things no matter the odds. But how did they get that way? Well, before they set off on their journey, Spain was a part of the Italian Wars, which lasted over 60 years. This experience granted most of the members of the Cortes party with the ability to stare down the barrel of a fight and not blink. Not to mention, they were used to being undermanned and sometimes outgunned, and yet they pushed through. This was one of the biggest hurdles of their crusade. They weren't able to bring in more men, yet they didn't care. They knew they could get the job done with the men they had, and that experience and determination is worth more than gold to many. So through sheer will and grit, they blasted through South America, and the world has never been the same. Number 6. The Cousins Cortes. When talking about the Spanish Conquistadors, the name that most people think of immediately is Hernan Cortes, for he was the one who led the charge against the Aztec Empire and defeated its leader Montezuma in brutal fashion, though Montezuma's revenge did get some payback. But another key man of the group, one who went and conquered the Incan Empire, was Francisco Pizarro. The crazy thing about this, though, was that the two conquerors were actually cousins. Distant cousins, mind you, but cousins nonetheless. Talk about fighting with your family, am I right? Cortes was ruthless, and during his conquest of the Aztecs, he let nothing get in his way, even burning down temples and homes to prove his point. Pizarro, meanwhile, had 4 brothers with him on the conquest, and they were the ones who took down the Incans and in the process got the nickname of the Mafia of the Conquistadors. Either way though, this family meant business, and they got that business done. Number 5. 80%. There's no doubt that Cortes and the Conquistadors had a big impact on South America, but what some people don't realize is just how big that impact really was. You see, before the Conquistadors came, South America had a large population that had adapted to just about everything that the land threw at them. But when the Conquistadors came, they didn't just bring weapons, they brought diseases too. A lot of people passed away simply because their immune systems weren't adapted to the diseases brought over from the Old World, which is very similar to what happened during Christopher Columbus's journey to the New World. But obviously, a lot of people passed away because Cortes and his crew were just plain fine with taking out as many people as they thought they could. Numerous massacres were done just because of certain beliefs that the conquistadors had, and not religious beliefs, mind you, but false claims and statements about uprisings and rebellions. By the time a century had passed since the arrival of the conquistadors, 80% of the native population had been wiped out. Number 4. The distribution of gold. So, the conquistadors went to try and conquer South America and beyond because of gold, right? And let me tell you, they found a lot of gold and were able to convince, trick, or straight up take the gold from the native people. So that begs the question, how much did each conquistador get for his work? That honestly depends on which army you're talking about, Pizarro's or Cortes's. Pizarro had a very fair mind when it came to treating his men well. After raiding tens of thousands of pounds of gold from the Incan people, he gave 45 pounds of gold to each soldier and 90 pounds of silver. Just in gold, that's around $800,000 in modern value. So imagine what that had been worth back then. And the silver would have had less value, but still worth a lot. As for Cortes, well, he was a pretty greedy guy. So much so that he held big cuts of the gold for himself and his officers, as well as to the King of Spain. So the soldiers got a mere pittance compared to the others. It is even said that Cortes may have hid large amounts of the gold so that nobody could get to it. Always try and work for the more generous guy. That's the lesson here. Number 3. Horsepower. And I do mean horsepower literally here, as one of the biggest advantages that the conquistadors had over the Aztecs wasn't just that their weapons and armor were superior, it's that they had something else that their foes hadn't seen before. Horses. Think about it. Do you see horses that often in South America? No, because they didn't exist naturally there for a very long time. So imagine now that there's an alien force trying to conquer your land and they're riding these beasts that you've never seen before. How do you think that's going to go over? Then you need to remember that the conquistadors were trained on their horses as cavalry. As such, they were not only well equipped to fight the Aztecs, but they could charge them with a speed and ferocity that must have seemed godlike to the Aztecs. True, the horses could be killed, but their looks, especially with the riders on them, and the sounds they made was something to fear. Number 2. Help from the locals. You might think that because they conquered the Aztec nation, that the conquistadors did it single-handedly, especially given their tactical prowess. But that's not exactly true. In fact, although the Aztecs were powerful, that kind of power brings a lot of enemies to the forefront. Well, Cortes used this to his advantage, especially since Spain couldn't send more men to help him. He went and found local tribes like the Totonacs and the Tlaxcaltecas rivals of the Aztec nation, and with their help they truly brought down the empire. But arguably just as important, Cortes had a translator, one who was very loyal to him. She helped them understand the language and customs of the people, thus giving them key insights into what to do next. Even conquerors need help sometimes. Number 1. Speaking Spanish. If you ever wonder why half of South America and many parts of Central and North America all speak Spanish, you can blame the conquistadors for that. Due to their domination of the area, they took out many of the native-speaking tongues that the tribes used and spread not only their religion, but their language as well. This spread throughout the centuries and now is an established part of the Americas. It's not dissimilar to how Alexander the Great paved the world in such a way that many people spoke Greek as its base language. What do you think about the impact of the conquistadors on South America? Let us know in the comments below and take care.